Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing another episode of our Jurassic World Evolution 2 mod spotlights. We take a look at some of the wonder mods people have been making and compare them to their real life fossil counterparts. And today we're going to be doing quite a bit of that, so we've got a couple interesting mods today. So we've got a remaster of the old Stegosaurus cosmetic pack that Hockow made back in the day. He's remastered it because his skills have definitely improved quite a bit. So he's gone back and he's planning to go back to a few of his older packs and really give a good sort out and have a good look at them and remake them. And they're honestly really beautiful and brilliant. I think he's done a really awesome job with them, especially with these new species. And then we've also got another animal that you kind of saw in the thumbnail, but we'll get into that. But we're going to be starting off going through this pack by Hockow1215. We're going to be starting by looking at the Chunkingosaurus. You can see we've got ourselves a little guy. See if we can find one that's going to stand out and do its own thing. You right there, mister. So this is Chunkingosaurus. You can see it's definitely been changed quite a lot. So it's actually considered a controversial genus of dinosaur. So it's quite interesting. And one of the first things is that you can see it's quite a bit smaller than the original in-game one, because Chunkingosaurus is actually, the holotype is believed to be one of the smallest stegosaurs known, and it's actually less than 4 meters long. And it was definitely an adult, considering look at the ossification of the sacrum that shows adult. But there are some specimens that may have been like 5 or meters or so. But they kind of they strongly resemble an animal called Giganosaurus, but it's like smaller size and deeper snout and lower jaws, make it a little bit more interesting as well. Yeah, the fossils of this guy were found in China in 1977 with the type species, which is JWE2, which is this one, named described in 1983 by Dong Zhiming, Zhao Shinu, and Zhang Yihong in Sichuan. But there are 3 additional species that haven't really got names yet. There's kind of 1, 2, and 3. They haven't all been. There was one kind of named Giganteus and Magnus, but they were all considered members of Chunkingosaurus. And there actually is some suggestions that maybe it could have been a juvenile, Giganosaurus. But evidence, as I mentioned, it has an adult. So, not too different from other stegosaurs, but you can see the changes here. You can see that much more interesting snout, and I love the texture on these guys. You can see the texture on all the scales. It looks amazingly brilliant. And you can see as well, got the shoulder spike, and then you can see kind of going. It's. I don't think we have a shoulder spike from this guy, but it is inferred by a lot of their relatives. And then you can see kind of the classic 2 rows of plates or going down their back. The 2 rows of plates and spikes on their backs and arranges pairs. As you can see, they've got 6 going on there. That's quite interesting. And these plates resemble those of Dinosaurs, which is a close relative. And the thagomizers, you can see there's 2 pairs, and then reported a 3rd pair coming out like that. So depending on what species you have, there is some that are got like the 2, like the classic Stegosaurus 2, pairs, and then you have a couple of extras. So it really just depends. And there actually is a Stegosaurus with 5 thagomizers described, which is quite interesting. But yeah, really, really cool one. I really love the color and love the detail on this. You can see it's also based on what we have of other stegosaurs. You can see you've got that much more pronounced beak, longer, more deeper snout and everything. A little bit of thinner neck. I love the toes as well. You can see there's got only the first kind of couple toes have the nails. The other ones are kind of covered by flesh and kind of like a mitten. It's almost like a horseshoe, so it's very typical of other dinosaurs. See that shoulder spike and some kind of other little osteoderms on the back there, which is seen in other species as well. You can see those kind of tall thagomizers, which is very similar to what we see on the real ones. You can see kind of comes up and then goes down, so it gets the tallest around the back. Some reconstructions make these ones a little bit more taller, but they're not really well preserved, so you don't know. And then kind of goes down the back there, and then down to the Thagomizers at the back there. At the back there, so that's quite cool. I'm definitely a big fan of it. You can see all the wrinkles as well. Just the detail is just amazing. I really do love Chunkingosauruses. They're really cool, and I love that Hokkal has been taking the point of making sure that they're getting a paleo-accurate remaster or new cosmetics. So because we always like to keep things a little bit more realistic here, which is always awesome. Yeah, we're gonna let them run off and do their thing. So next up we have got another cool species here. We're going a bit bigger this time, and it's got a much more notable shoulder spike. We've got Gigant Spinosaurus. There's another one with some awesome patterns, and look at this guy. Definitely a big fan of him. So this is Gigant Spinosaurus, or giant spine lizard. It's another species of Stegosaur. Oh, that one's actually... Oh no, I hate that bug. Me too. So here we are, back again. So this is Gigant Spinosaurus. It was first found in 1985, where it was mistaken for a specimen to Dinosaurs, but the type species is Gigant Spinosaurus hmani, as it was described, and its last name derives from Latin gigas, or giganteus, which is enormous, and spina, which means spine, because it has clearly quite the enormous shoulder spine. And the holotype was found in the Oxfordian about 165 million years ago, or about 150 million years ago or so, and found in the Upper Saximo Formation in Zhejiang. And the partial skeleton was actually believed to be a subadult individual, that is including bits of the skull and other small elements of the plates and things like that. But there is actually a portion of skin preserved, so that kind of gives a good idea as well. And there also is a second specimen that's a pelvis. So in terms of how big it is in its relatives, it is a medium-sized stegosaur, so it's not considered enormous. But it was about 4.2 meters, or about 14 feet long, and would have weighed about 700 kilograms. And it's quite distinct compared to a lot of other stegosaurs. You can see the plates are quite more rounded, not quite as distinctive, a little bit smaller. But the shoulder spine, as you can see, is greatly enlarged, and it's called the spinae parascapulus, and it's twice the length of the actual shoulder blade, which is rested via large flat bases. And the plates on the neck, as you can see, are quite triangular, and in the body you can see they kind of lean out as you go down, because we do have a little bit of an idea of what those would look like based on the plates that we have found, because we haven't found a whole series, but we know the back plates there kind of started curving a bit, and kind of how it went down. The hips you can also see are quite broad, so you can see there's quite broad hips, and look, they all get a cloaca, so you can see the cloaca there, so if you're ever curious. But yeah, really, really cool. Hips are very broad, and the neural spine of the four sacral vertebrae and the first tail vertebrae are actually fused to a single plate, and they have quite robust forelimbs. You see there, they've got bodybuilder arms, and we'll have a look over here, and you can see the other correct anatomy. You can see, you've got the 3 toes there. With nails, and they've got the horseshoe, and the back's got the 3 as well, and these little toe pads that help cushion their weight, because they're quite heavy animals. As I mentioned, 700 kilograms was the size of this guy, and that's quite cool. We don't actually have the Thagomizers from this guy, so it's kind of considered the typical to arrange it, but it could have been different. And the skin impression is actually found in a surface of about 414 square centimeters, and show they had like small rosettes with central pentagonal and hexagonal scales, with by 13 or 14 ridged smaller square ones with a diameter between 5 to 9 millimeters. So you can see that's actually an accurate pattern of scales, and much better than the very like almost plastic texture that the original ones get in the game. But yeah, that's quite cool. Definitely a big fan of this guy, and it is, I believe, about the correct size, maybe. I know that Hakao has changed them to better fit their accurate sizes, and these guys, it wasn't an adult, the specimen, but it could have potentially got, about 5 meters long, 4.5 meters, 5 meters in length. And that's a subadult, so it could have got a little bit bigger. So I believe this is pretty much in their size range. But you can see they've got that really big shoulder spike there, where they get their name. And there's different orientation. Some people put it like really up, and some put it down. But yeah, just got to commit to it, and it makes it look really interesting. Very cool animal. Another nice one to see. So we'll let them run off and do their thing. We'll actually turn off the park because I know everyone's going to be like, I want to go see dinosaurs and things like that. Let's close the park. Okay, so next up we've got another cool Asian Stegosaur. So we'll let them run off and do their thing. We've got another Asian Stegosaur. We've got Huangosaurus. So let's have a look at this guy. So this one's actually a close relative of Chunkingosaurus in the family Huangosauridae, which was a group of like Asian primitive stegosaurs. But this one's actually known from the Bathonian to Californian, which is about 20 million years before Stegosaurus was around, so about 170 to 160 million years ago. And its name means Huanyang, which is an alternate name for the Sichuan province where it was found, and Saurus, of course, meaning lizard. And like other stegosaurs, it's quadrupedal. It's got a small skull, and you can see it's actually got quite a boxy skull, which is interesting as well. And they have this distinctive row of back plates, very similar, and these plates rose vertically along the arch back. And Huangosaurus, they seem to be a lot more like blade-like. You can see they kind of, some are round, and then they kind of, come up to be blades, rather than the more flat and blade-like ones of Stegosaurus. And they also have the classic two thagomizers, and they do, as you can see, a little bit of a club on the end of the tail, which is also quite interesting. And you can see that obviously the patterns of rosettes as well. They do have several types of osteoderms. On the neck and back, there's actually a small row of vertical plates on there, and on the rear of the tail, they formed a thagomizer, and each flank had rows of smaller osteoderms, as you kind of see there, and they also have this, long shoulder spike, which is characteristic of that group of stegosaurs, which is quite interesting. And you see also with Huangosaurus and a lot of those Asian stegosaurs, they've got very robust forelimbs. So you kind of see that going on here. And you can see they've got the same, sort of pattern as everyone else. And you can see the different scale texture as well, because the scale texture on this guy is different from this guy. And that's what makes it really, really cool. I love that. I love that about them. As I mentioned, they do have those two thagomizers as well. And there was still another smaller species of stegosaur, bigger than Chunkingosaurus, but smaller than Gigant Spinosaurus. So they got to about 4 meters long and about 500 kilograms or half a ton. And there has been a couple other bits found. There's several specimens that were considered referable to Huangosaurus, They could also belong to a different taxon. Some of them are just kind of like diagnostic. But yeah, they not too different. They're more kind of a base or body plan for other stegosaurs. But I just love the design of this one. Especially love the colours. I have to say it's actually probably one of my favourites. You can see you've got the really nice patterns there, and like the osteoderms, and you can see the quite big bulky arms there. That looks quite cool. Definitely a big fan of that. And the colours just come out really well. See, another really cool one, so we'll let them run off and do their thing. So that's enough of the Asian stegosaurs. So now we're going to Africa. Have a look at another one we've got here, Kentaurus. Here we got Kentaurus, really, really cool one here. So let's see if we can get a look at this guy. He's got really beautiful colours here. By the looks of him. Actually, just let him get a bit straighter, I guess. That there, perfect. So this is Kentaurus. So this is a small. It's Pithecus. Was named by German paleontologist Erwin Henning in 1915, and is considered a primitive Stegosaurian member, often considered, but is actually much more derived, and is actually considered a relative of the North American Stegosaurus and Stegosauridae. So it's actually not too distantly related from those guys. But yeah, in terms of like kind of their body there, you can see they're relatively small stegosaurs. They get to about 4 to 4.5 meters and about 700 to 1600 kilograms, or between 1,500 and 8,500 pounds. Though there is some specimens that suggest they may have gotten bigger and may have even got comparable to some stegosaurs in dimensions. So they have the typical, kind of look of a stegosaurid. So they've got the elongated and flatted head. They've got very much pillar-like limbs as well, and the powerful build of those forelimbs as well, and an array of spikes. And you can see they've kind of got much taller spikes that are much more blade-like that go down. And you can actually it's very difficult to actually tell the thagomisers from, the back spikes. And they're also quite famous for having this kind of big spike going on their side there, which is not too dissimilar, but it's actually weird that it's kind of a later stegosaurus, which is interesting. They had also had quite a long tail for a stegosaur, and the centre of mass is actually unusually far back for a quadrupedal animal. And however, the femora is straight and as opposed to typical bipeds, which is interesting. And the center of mass was actually not heavily kind of modified by osteoderms, so they were more stable as well. And they could actually believed to reach a tripod stance, so they could go back on their back legs and tripod and use their tail as kind of another stabilizer, which is interesting. In terms of the armors, you can see they've got quite extensive osteoderms, which we saw, in other stegosaurs, and including the small plates. And Kentaurus' the spikes are very elongated. One got to about 73 centimeters long, and the plates have a thick incision in the middle, and these kind of likely covered in horn. And the exact position of most of these osteoderms were uncertain, but like other stegosaurs, they probably would have been in rows across the body, and then have the two pairs going up and down the body is kind of considered typical for them, which is interesting. And as I mentioned, they are a member of Stegosauridae, so they are more closely related to things like Dinosaurs and Maragaya and Stegosaurus, than they are to Huangosaurus, which is interesting as well, and not too different. These guys would have used their tails for defense, of course, and you can see, they've got the same sort of anatomical changes that really just make it look much more like the realistic animal. Which is quite cool, thinner neck, much better scaling, better beak and bigger head and all that good stuff. And this looks like it's what it should look like, and it is nice to have an African stegosaur coming from the Teneguru. So it did live with animals like Giraffe Titan and Dicraeosaurus and the Laphosaurus, so a very interesting animal. But yeah, really, really cool. So that's Kentaurus. We've still got a couple left, so we've got the two other species of Stegosaurus. So I've done them in alphabetical order. So the next one is, of course, going to be Stegosaurus. And there's two different species of Stegosaurus that Hockowl has made, and also two species of Werosaurus, as we'll get into. So let's have a look at Stegosaurus stenops. This one's got some really interesting colouring. I especially like that one at the back there, like this one. I think that looks really nice. But anyway, we're going to have a look at someone that's in a good position, I think, in the sunlight. Actually, have a look at you then. So here is Stegosaurus stenops. Another really cool one. There we are. This is Stegosaurus stenops. So Stegosaurus stenops itself means narrow-faced roof lizard, and is named by Marsh in 1887. but the holotype being collected in Garden Park in Colorado in 1886. So they are the best known species of Stegosaurus, and there's many different specimens known. Sophie as well, who's considered quite a well-preserved specimen as a specimen of Stenops. They are proportionally large, broad plates, as you can see, much broader than other species of Stegosaurs, and double rows of rounded tail plates and things like that. And articulated specimens, or specimens that were preserved how they were in life, show that it was kind of an alternating row, so they weren't like the other stegosaurs. They were kind of all one by one. It kind of staggered a bit. So you can see, if you look at the back there, you can see it kind of staggers and gives it that characteristic Stegosaurus look. It is known from about 50 different specimens that include adults and juveniles, one complete skull, and some front partial skulls. Is actually considered shorter than a lot of other species. They're about 6.5 meters long, or about 21 feet, which is still bigger than most other stegosaurs, but still smaller than the other species as we'll get into. And this is found in the Morrison Formation in Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah. So there is some arguments that these two kind of species would be the same animal. There is some arguments there, but the two main species distinction is kind of what happens at the moment. And what's really cool, we had the specimen Sophie that showed that these guys actually had much longer necks than we thought, because we thought that Miragai was like a weird long neck stegosaur, but actually most stegosaurs kind of have that longer neck. But you can see this is definitely based on something like Sophie, or changed a little bit to better fit that anatomy. So compared to the Jurassic Park one, which is of course not very accurate at all, it's got that longer neck, much better textures, much bigger beak as well. You can see they got that beak, good for crushing and getting through plants. The right toes as well, you can see you've got the two there, back there as well. Lovely plates. I love the colours and the patterns on these guys. And the two Thagomices. And I mentioned there is a specimen of Stegosaurus with actually 5 Thagomices, which is really, really interesting. But yeah, a really cool one. Nice to see Stegosaurus. So I'll let it run and do its thing. So that is Stegosaurus Stenops. Next up, we're going to have a look at Stegosaurus Unulatus. There we are. So you can see the comparison there, or actually that's quite a good comparison actually. Let's have a look at this guy. Which one should we look at? Then we'll look at you, because you look quite nice there. So this is Stegosaurus Unulatus. So Stegosaurus Unulatus means hoofed roof lizard, and was named by Marsh in 1879. So it is from remains of Colm wolf, and is actually, as mentioned, considered might be synonymous with Stenops. These guys are about 7 meters long, so a little bit bigger, about 23 feet, and is the longest species within the genus of Stegosaurus. A fragmentary Stegosaurus specimen from Portugal as well has been kind of given to the species. The main way the species can be distinguished from Stenops is these guys have longer hind limbs, so you see there's a little bit more of a sloped look there. They also have more pointed plates with a wide base, so that's more the classic Stegosaurus look. So they've got much more wider bases and thinner plates. As you can see, they kind of taper off a lot more. That's the other way you can tell them apart, with wide bases and narrow tips. And just before the spikes, they also can be distinguished by several small flat spine-like plates just before the spikes of the hips. So you can kind of see that there. These spines appear to be paired, but due to the presence of at least one pair, they are identical but not mirrored. They also, as I mentioned, have longer legs, femora and hind bones in other species. And a type species of Ungulatus was actually discovered with 8 spines, though they were scattered throughout their positions. And that was interpreted originally that they had 4 pairs of tail spikes. But no specimen has been found with complete articulated set of tail spikes, but no additional specimens have been found with 8 spikes either. And it's possible that the extra spikes came from different individuals as well. But yeah, that's, as I mentioned, kind of potentially one of the other species of Stegosaurus Stenops. And you can actually kind of see the point of, they look a little bit different, and this is actually made a little bit more different probably by the references that Hockel used. But yeah, they're still considered different species. You know, much more rounded, much more. That's a little bit more classical Stegosaurus look in my mind. And you can also see the difference in the plates there. The stenops is much wider, and these guys kind of get more dagger-like, rather than these are more like, you know, what you, I don't even know what you call them, the things that you use, you know, to take cakes. So they're very different shapes, and I think that helps to make them different looking as different species. They still look beautiful either way, and it's really nice that Hockel really took the time to go back and, you know, redo some of these species for the cosmetic pack, because you know, I'm a big Hockel fan, and I love that he takes the effort to really give us some accurate dinosaurs. So I'll let them run off and do their thing, and then we'll move on to the two species of Werosaurus. So let's have a look at these two guys. So let's have a look. The first species is Hmani, is I believe the name. So let's have a look at that species.
Don't spend too much time looking at those plates. When it comes to the Werosaurus, it pays to keep an eye on this animal's thagomizer. You don't want to be on the receiving end of a swing of that tail.
Thank you for interrupting me. I very much appreciate that. But anyway, we're going to have a look at where's one of these? We'll have a look at you. You look like the most nice one out of there posing for me. So yeah, here's Werosaurus. So this is Hmani, which is actually a quite an interesting species. So it's believed to have reached about 7 meters long and about 4 tons in body mass, and only really a few scattered bones to make its reconstruction. And the classical really round plates that you see of most typical Werosaurus reconstructions was actually caused by breakage, so they did have potentially more typical Stegosaurus kind of plates there. So you can kind of see it's kind of kept that shape, but also made a little bit more classical Stegosaurian is there. And the neural spines at the tail base was exceptionally tall, so that's the cool thing about them as well. And they are close relatives of Stegosaurus. In fact, they were kind of considered the same genus for a little bit, and some people do consider them the same genus as Stegosaurus, but they're not too different there. You can see you've got that very long neck there, and you see they're very similar to Stegosaurus in itself. You can see also the changes to the plates as well. So this one's a little bit more, you know, takes the kind of classic thing that tells them apart. You know, there's really wide plates that, you know, often see them reconstructed as almost as like little things there. But they've been changed, you know, to just make them a little bit more standard to other Stegosaurs. And I think they do fit quite well, you know, given that long neck and, you know, nice patterns. And yeah, I kind of don't want to go over the same things again. But yeah, nice to see a accurate Werosaurus Hmani. And then we've got the last species here, which is quite interesting. So this species is Werosaurus ordrensis. And you can see these guys are quite a bit smaller. So we'll let them actually walk away a bit. And I really like the patterns on this one too. I think this is actually one of my favorites. So we'll have a look at you, since you're probably the... No, which one's looking the best? We'll pick you. Why not? No, we'll pick you, because you are the best position to show you off your species. So yeah, here is Orodrimus, which is actually much smaller, and was thought to be about 5 meters long and weighed about 1 ton. And as you can see, like other species of Werosaurus, they do have quite a long neck and a broad pelvis, but its neural spines were actually shorter, so not quite as rounded. As you can see, almost like a little bit more, you know, lengthy and laid out as well. So the main difference between the two species is that they're found in different formations as well. The Hmani is found in the Tuvalu group, and Oriensis, this one, is found in the Hirano group. So the approximate age of these guys is about 130 million years ago. So what's really cool is that these are early Cretaceous stegosaurs, and are considered to be some of the last stegosaurs. So it's kind of fitting that they're kind of the last on the list there. Uranium dates show that the age of the Linneman formation of the Chugall group is slightly younger than is about 135 million years ago. Werosaurus, and the information is from the Brominian, which is interesting as well. And there have been footprints found as well that have been attributed to the Homo individuals. Yeah, in terms of their ecology and things like that, they're not too different. And there had been some debate whether this is actually a species Stegosaurus and things like that, and lumped into Stegosaurus. But yeah, I have to say this is actually one of my favorites. You can see they did manage to keep kind of those really big round plate designs. I really like that. And, I really love the patterns and everything. I just can't stop gushing about this animal. It's bloody brilliant, it is. But yeah, so that's all the animals from this pack done. So as I mentioned, it was done by Hockow1215, and these are all cosmetic edits to animals in game. So this is all the stegosaurs in the game, given different cosmetics. Though one thing to note as well, some of them are different animations from others. So there's a list on the mod page to give you the correct amount of ones that you should release, and exit, incubate, and release. Otherwise, the games will crash because they're kind of conflicting different rigs. But other than that, really awesome. Got to thank Hockow. Really did an awesome job with this one, and I like that you're going back and having a look at your older mods and remaking them, because your skill level is definitely improved. And I really hope to see. I know you're working on based on your Trello, because they've got a Trello. You can see that on their mod page. I'm really excited to see what you do with the Ceratopsian pack as well. And I noticed Loki Ceratops in there. Why not sneak that into the Ceratopsian pack as well? So that would be cool. But anyway, we're going to move on to our last species of the day. So we can't just have stegosaurs all day. We've got ourselves one done by JWE2. We have got a killer beta. So here is our killer beta. We'll actually wait till you. Let's let you pose like that. I like that. That's a nice pose. So killer beta, which means Achilles hero, which is a genus of large dromaeosaur that lived during the late Cretaceous from between 96 to 89 million years ago, and it lived in the Barron Shirin formation of Mongolia. And the only species known is Achilla beta giganteus, which was first discovered in 1989 and then described in 1999. And it's the first dromaeosaurid from this group, from this formation, and the largest. So its first was discovered in South Central Mongolia in 1989 in the Gobi Desert. And it was found in the Birthcut locality, where it had been finding things like mudstones and things like that, which had been kind of found in the late Cretaceous. The specimen was thought as found in, bits of parts like the left maxilla with 9 teeth, dorsal vertebrae, and other bits and bobs, and then was kind of taken and stored by assistant paleontologist Narashami Bashen, and 10 years later it was described in 1999 as being the holotype for Achilla beta giganteus. It was identified as dromaeosaurid. And the description was kind of performed by Mongolian paleontologist Ilan Gutta Palate and North American paleontologists Mark A. Norrell and James M. Clark. And in terms of entomology, Achilla beta is derived from the word Achilles, which is the name for Achilles, which actually refers to the large Achilles tendon that would have supported the second pedal ungle, or the big claw that you kind of see there. Of most dromaeosaurs, and on the Mongolian word is batar, which means hero. So Tarbosaurus, batar means kind of hero. And yeah, as I mentioned, all that was quite cool. There's also some evidence that suggests it may be a chimera of different species as well, but we can't really know that. But anyway, it is actually considered one of the largest species of dromaeosaurid, reaching about 4.5 to 5 meters long, or 15 to 16 feet, and weighed between 250 to 350 kilograms. And although the holotype is lacking in any feather integument, because of its relatives, it's very likely that it did have feathers. Its skull itself was quite deep and robust. The maxilla was about 29 centimeters in length, and they actually had homeodont teeth, so that means they had very similar teeth. And they actually had more relatively large skulls compared to other dromaeosaurs, and actually maybe more similar to carnosaurs, kind of taking that niche in the ecosystem. Their anatomy in general kind of suggests they were big and robust, so they were kind of all the top dogs in the ecosystem a bit. which is quite interesting. In terms of its classification, it was actually placed as a close relative of Dromaeosaurus, but now is considered a member of Dromaeosauridae. And they would have placed it near Dromaeosauridae, so they're not differ with things like Hoscaraptorines and Microraptorines. But more recent phylogenies actually show that Achillobeta is a relative of Utahraptor, which makes a lot of sense, even though that could be convergent evolution. It does make a lot of sense, and that because they're very big dromaeosaurs look quite similar, which is also interesting. In terms of its paleobiology, though, the pelvic region indicates they had quite massive thighs, so they could actually run at a decent speed, and would probably actually use their legs, to leap on things, and maybe not have been able to run for a large time, but they would have been able to ambush and tackle prey, and they would have used things like raptor prey restraint to hold down their animals as they kind of get them. So they would have had, would have been quite good, getting large prey, which is cool. In terms of its environment, the Barra Shen Formation was quite a rich environment, and it kind of was dated, as I mentioned, about 95 to 89 million years ago. And it was quite a humid formation, so there was a lot of lakes and rivers and streams, and it did live with a lot of very interesting animals. It lived with theropods such as Huangosaurus, Stegosaurus, and Gogoromimus, and Electrosaurus, which was a bunch of theropods. Electrosaurus being a tyrannosaurid. Talarurus is another good one. Gracilloceratops and Pachycephali, which are both ceratopsians and pachycephalosaurs, respectively. Also lots of turtles and sauropods like Kentaurus. So very rich, interesting formation with a lot of different animals. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of big carnivores except for Electrosaurus. So that could have been, potentially quite a big predator in the ecosystem as well. So yeah, really, really cool. Definitely a big fan of this species. So yeah, thank you Trippy for making that. So yeah, I'm going to finish that up now. So thank you, Hakao. You did a really awesome job with all this. Love the Stegosaur cosmetics, and nice to be able to cover it. And yeah, thank you Trippy for making the Achillobeta. Really, really awesome. So yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified about anything. So if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.